He spent 10 years as a monk learning to want nothing. Now he has everything to lose. His father just had a heart attack and is using it to pull him back to Seoul. The monastery never formally dissolved his vows, which means legally, officially, he is still a monk. There's a hearing that could invalidate everything. His company is demanding answers. And Adiz, pregnant, alone in Lagos, with a man from her past, a professor who believes she owes him something, showing up at her university, asking about her. He has 20 minutes to decide. Does he get on the plane to Seoul and leave her to handle it alone? Or does he stay and watch everything he built in Korea start to collapse? What does a man who once vowed to want nothing do when he finally has something worth fighting for? Welcome to Afro Dark Diaries TV. This is The Monk's Vow Part 4, When Love Requires Roots. Let's go. They sat in the apartment for 3 minutes without speaking. 3 minutes is a long time when the world is falling apart. Taejun counted the seconds the way he used to count breaths in the monastery. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. A pattern that had once meant peace. Now it just meant he was still breathing. The airport, Adiz said finally, her voice scraped flat. You have to leave in 20 minutes, or you'll miss the connection in Dubai. I'm not leaving you. Your father had a heart attack. And Dr. Adebayo is at your university. Today. Right now. Taejun's voice was quiet but absolute. I am not putting you on a video call to handle that alone. Taejun. What does he want? He sat beside her, taking her hands. You said his name and your face went a specific kind of still. The kind that means you already know what he wants. Tell me. Adiz pulled her hands back, standing. She moved to the window where Lagos traffic crawled below them in endless honking chaos. Traffic she hadn't yet learned to read, in a city that was simultaneously hers and foreign. His name is Dr. Emmanuel Adebayo, she said to the window. He was my graduate advisor at the University of Toronto. Brilliant scholar. West African art history, specifically Igbo bronze work. The kind of person who fills a room when he walks in. A pause. And the kind of person who knows exactly what kind of power that gives him. What did he do to you? Nothing I could prove. She turned around, and he could see the precise tension in her jaw, controlled anger well practiced. He was never explicit. He never touched me inappropriately. But there were comments. About my appearance when I came into meetings. About how lucky I was to have his guidance. About how I should be grateful for his recommendation letters, because without them I'd still be teaching secondary school in Accra. Gratitude is debt. Yes. And then when I was applying for this position in Lagos, he wrote my letters. Glowing letters, apparently. Letters that helped land me this job. She crossed her arms. And now he's here. Before the semester has even started. Which means he's not here to congratulate me. He's here to collect. The words landed in the room like stones. Taejun stood. He was very still in the way he'd learned in the monastery. The kind of stillness that preceded absolute focus, not peace. Call your department chair. Tell them Dr. Adebayo is not to meet with you alone. Not anywhere on campus. Not under any circumstances. I can't start my position by. You can start your position by establishing that you handle your own professional relationships. He picked up his phone, already searching. What hotel is he at? Taejun, you're not going to confront him. Watch me. That is the worst possible idea. She grabbed his arm, turning him to face her. You showing up at his hotel like an aggressive Korean boyfriend will give him exactly what he needs. A narrative. Adiz can't handle herself, she sent her man. It will undermine everything I've spent a decade building. He stopped. She was right. He hated that she was right. Then what? The helplessness was unfamiliar. He was used to solving problems, not being told his solution would make them worse. Then I handle it. Professionally. With documentation and witnesses and institutional procedures. She looked at him steadily. This is my world, Taejun. I know how to navigate it. You charging in as my protector doesn't help. It makes me look weak. And if he escalates? If he threatens your position? Then we escalate through proper channels. With evidence. Her chin lifted, and he saw the steel in her that had drawn him from the beginning. The woman who'd stood in his gallery and spoken about devotion across time as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I've been navigating men like Dr. Adebayo my entire career. I know what I'm doing. I know you do. He pulled her close, pressing his lips to her forehead. But you shouldn't have to do it alone. I won't be alone. You'll be on the phone. Every step. She pulled back to look at him. Taejun, your father. The children. The monastery. These are real things you have to address. And the only way we can build our life here is if you deal with Seoul, so it stops pulling you back. Go. Handle it. Come back to me. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I promise. 2 weeks, she repeated. And you call me every day. Twice a day. Morning and evening. Every day. He kissed her, deep and slow, both of them putting everything into it because neither knew exactly what the next 2 weeks would bring. When he pulled back, her eyes were bright. Ada, I need you to know something. What? Whatever Adebayo came here wanting, whatever he thinks he can take from you, he was wrong the moment he decided you owe him anything. You earned this position. Everything you have, you earned. And if he threatens that, I will spend every resource I have making sure he knows the cost. From Seoul, she said dryly. From Seoul. Long-distance nuclear retaliation is still nuclear retaliation. She laughed despite everything. That full, unrestrained sound he'd fallen in love with in his family's gallery when this was all just confusion and longing. Go. You'll miss your flight. He picked up his bag. Stopped at the door. Our baby, he said quietly. She put her hand on her still flat stomach. Our baby. We're going to be okay. We are, she agreed. And this time it sounded less like reassurance and more like a decision. Adiz called her department chair 5 minutes after Tae-jun left for the airport. Professor Ease, I understand Dr. Adebayo is on campus today. A brief silence on the line. Then carefully. Yes. He mentioned he was visiting Lagos and wanted to reconnect with former students. I assumed you knew he was coming. I didn't. Could we set a formal meeting? With both of us present in your office? She kept her voice precise, professional. I believe in handling professional relationships through proper channels. Another pause. Longer this time. Professor Ease was a sharp woman. She'd survived 25 years building this department, which meant she understood exactly what Adiz wasn't saying. Of course. My office. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. A beat. Adiz? I'm glad you called me. She heard the message underneath. She wasn't alone. Dr. Emmanuel Adebayo appeared at her apartment door at 6 that evening. She'd been half expecting it. He was the kind of man who tested boundaries incrementally, showing up where he wasn't invited, seeing what resistance he met, calibrating his approach accordingly. She'd watched him do it to 3 other female students in Toronto. She opened the door but didn't step back to let him in. He was exactly as she remembered, distinguished, silver-templed, wearing the kind of casual linen suit that whispered old money. His smile was warm and practiced, the smile of a man who'd been called charming so often he'd started believing it before the evidence. Adiz, you look extraordinary. He spread his arms. Lagos agrees with you. Dr. Adebayo. I wasn't expecting you. She kept her hand on the doorframe. How did you know my address? The university directory. I called ahead, though I suppose I should have texted first. He laughed, easy and unembarrassed. I was in town and wanted to congratulate you personally. You've landed quite the position. I have. I worked hard for it. You did. He nodded, and something in his eyes sharpened behind the warmth. Though I imagine it helped having strong letters of support. Not every candidate had such comprehensive recommendations. There it was, laid as gently as a trap set in velvet. I had strong letters because I produced strong research, Adiz said evenly. My publication record speaks for itself. Of course. Of course. He leaned against the door frame, a posture of casual entitlement, claiming the threshold of her space without permission. I'm hosting a dinner tomorrow evening. Some scholars, a few significant donors to the arts in Lagos. The kind of people who fund programs. He tilted his head. It would be good for the department if you attended. I could make some introductions. I appreciate the thought. I'll need to review my schedule. She reached for the door, drawing it slightly inward. Professor Ease and I are meeting tomorrow morning. I'll mention you'd like to be helpful with donor outreach. His smile didn't waver, but something behind it did. The adjustment of a man recalibrating. He'd expected gratitude. Accommodation. The particular softness of someone who believed they owed him. He hadn't expected walls. Wonderful, he said. Until then, Adiz. She closed the door and stood with her back against it, breathing carefully. Her phone buzzed. Tae-jun, just landed in Dubai for the connection. How are you? How's the baby? She smiled despite everything. He'd been in the air for 6 hours and his first words were about their baby. Adiz, baby is fine. I'm fine. Adebayo came to the apartment. The response was immediate. What? Do you need me to turn around? Adiz, absolutely not. I handled it. Going through proper channels tomorrow. He showed his hand early. Wanted to take credit for this position. I didn't give him the opening. 3 seconds of silence. Then, God, I love you. You're incredible. Adiz, I know. Go sleep on the plane. You have a monastery to face in 2 days. Tae-jun, how are you? Not just the situation. You. She looked around the apartment, half-unpacked boxes, unfamiliar sounds of Lagos evening filtering through the window, a pregnancy test still on the bathroom counter she hadn't yet figured out what to do with. Adiz, terrified, excited, nauseous from both the pregnancy and the situation. But okay. Genuinely okay. Taejun, I'll be back in 2 weeks. You are the bravest person I know. She sat down on the floor of her apartment, in a city that was hers and foreign simultaneously, carrying a baby she hadn't planned and a love she hadn't expected, and she breathed. She was going to be okay. She'd decided. Seoul hit Taejun like a time machine. 22 hours of travel, and stepping out of Incheon Airport felt like stepping back into a version of himself he thought he'd left behind. The cool, organized efficiency of it. The particular quality of Korean light. The language that surrounded him like a second skin he'd forgotten he was wearing. Soojin met him at the airport, the children beside her. Hannah ran to him immediately, attaching herself to his leg. You're back. She looked up with fierce accusation. You said you'd call every morning. Yesterday morning you were in an airplane. I was. The plane doesn't have good Wi-Fi. He crouched to hug her properly. I thought about you the whole time. That's not the same as calling. You're right. I'm sorry. Ji-woo hung back, more measured, watching him with eyes that had gotten older since Taejun left. How was Lagos? Hot. Chaotic. Beautiful. He pulled the boy into a side hug. I brought you something. Both of you. He'd spent 40 minutes in the Dubai duty-free selecting with intense care. For Hannah, a small silver elephant on a chain, Nigerian craft, warmth in the metal. For Ji-woo, a compass. So you can always find your way. Ji-woo looked at the compass for a long time. Did Ada help you pick this? She suggested the shop. But I chose what was right for each of you. Is she okay? She looked tired in the last video call. She's strong. She's building something important. He ruffled Ji-woo's hair. She asks about you both every day. In Soojin's car on the way to the hospital, the children asleep in the back, his sister-in-law drove in silence for a full 10 minutes before speaking. Your father is stable. The cardiologist says it was a moderate event. He'll need medication and lifestyle changes, but he's not dying. I know. You sent the medical report. I also sent his request for you to come home permanently. I know that too. Another silence. Seoul's familiarity pressing against the windows. Taejun, was he manipulating you? With the heart attack. She kept her eyes on the road. His assistant called me after you left. Said the old man had been under unusual stress because of family instability. Which meant you. Stress is real even when it's self-created. He watched the city pass. I'm not going to be angry at him for being sick. But I'm also not going to let guilt become a leash. When did you get wise? Someone very smart kept telling me I was hiding. Eventually it stuck. The hospital was quiet at this hour. His father was in a private room, looking smaller than Taejun had ever seen him. The formidable Kim Dong-woo reduced to monitors and 4 lines, his hanbok replaced with a hospital gown. But his eyes were sharp. They were always sharp. You came, his father said. Of course I came. Taejun sat in the chair beside the bed. How are you feeling? Like my heart tried to leave the building without me. A pause. How is Lagos? Extraordinary. Difficult. Exactly what I needed. His father studied him with the assessing gaze that had once made Taejun feel permanently inadequate. You look different. Less. He searched for words. Less apologetic. I'm learning to stop apologizing for being alive. The woman did that? She accelerated it. The work was already mine. His father was quiet for a moment. Then, I may have been too harsh. At the dinner. In my response to your choices. Taejun said nothing, waiting. He'd learned that from the monastery too. That some confessions needed silence to land in properly. I spent 40 years building something, his father continued. And Minjun was going to carry it forward. When he died, I saw all of it dying with him. And you were the only hope of keeping it alive. His voice roughened. I may have treated that hope as more important than the person. You did, Taejun said without anger. But I understand why. I don't want you to understand why. I want to correct it. His father's hands, still bearing the authority of decades, rested on the hospital blanket. Go back to Lagos. Lead your life. I'll handle the board. The board has already accepted the transition to MinSEO. They've accepted the decision. They haven't accepted the narrative. I can give them one. Kim Corporation expanding to Africa. International Advisory Board. My son building bridges between continents. A ghost of his former self in the suggestion. Strategic, sharp, making the best of what couldn't be changed. It's even true. Why? Because watching you leave, actually leave willingly for something you chose, was the first time I saw you resemble a man who knows what he wants. His father turned to look at him. Minjun always knew. Even at 10 years old, he knew. I used to worry about you. That you'd inherited nothing. But I was wrong. You inherited the stubbornness. Taejun said nothing for a moment. Then, she's pregnant. The monitors beeped steadily in the silence. Your woman, his father said. My future wife. Yes. Does she know this? That she'll be your wife? She doesn't know I'm planning to ask her. But yes, she'll be my wife. His father closed his eyes. For a moment Taejun thought he'd fallen asleep. But then his father spoke very quietly. Bring her to Seoul. Before the baby comes. Let me meet her properly. Let the family celebrate, not interrogate. A long pause. Minjun would have liked a grandchild in the house. He would have terrorized the child with bad jokes. Yes. His father's mouth curved, barely but genuinely. He would have. Beopjusa Temple in autumn was the most beautiful thing Taejun had ever seen. He'd forgotten, in the noise and heat and color of Lagos, the particular quality of Korean mountain silence. The temple grounds smelled of incense and pine. Monks moved in the slow, deliberate rhythms he'd spent 10 years learning. The meditation hall where he'd knelt through thousands of sessions stood unchanged, its wooden floors worn smooth by generations of seeking. He'd left something here. He was only now understanding that he'd also taken something with him. Master Yoon met him at the gate himself, breaking protocol, which told Taejun more than any words could. The hearing is in 2 hours, the old monk said, walking with him toward the main hall. The complaint was filed by Brother Daesung. He was your junior at Beopjusa. He believes your departure dishonored the temple and your ordination. And you? I believe my failure to file the proper dissolution papers created a loophole he's exploiting. Master Yoon's voice was measured but carried something underneath it that Taejun recognized after a decade of close study, guilt. I made an error, Taejun. In my haste to ensure you got home safely after Minjun's death, I failed to complete the formal exit process. That is my failing, not yours. Then say so in the hearing. I will. But there are also questions being asked about your behavior in the world. About your relationship. About your... He paused. About your forthcoming child. Taejun stopped walking. How do they know about the pregnancy? Brother Daesung has contacts in Seoul. In the business community. The old monk met his gaze. I suspect someone is feeding him information. The board. Or his father's opponents. Someone who wanted to destabilize him, discredit him, make his choices look like failures of character rather than exercises of it. What happens if the hearing rules against me? The ruling would declare your departure a violation of vows rather than a legitimate exit. It would mean officially that you never properly left the monastic life. It would create complications for any legal marriage. For paternity recognition under certain traditional frameworks. Master Yoon folded his hands. It would be used to harm you and your family. And your testimony? My testimony is truth. I failed to file the papers. The failure is administrative, not spiritual. Your departure was legitimate. You were needed at home. You had a genuine calling to family and the world. He looked at Taejun steadily. But Taejun, the hearing is also an opportunity. A chance to speak clearly and publicly about why you left. About what you found. About how you understand your practice now. You want me to defend not just my departure but my life. I want you to speak your truth. As a monk, you learn to observe reality without flinching. Do that now. Tell them what you found in the world. The hearing was held in the formal council chamber, a room Taejun had only entered once before, as a young novice receiving initial instruction. Stone walls. High windows. The 9 senior monks of the temple sitting in a formal arrangement. Brother Daesung sat across the room. He was younger than Taejun, 26, with the pinched certainty of someone who'd never been tested by the world he was judging. Master Yoon spoke first, clearly and without evasion. He had failed to file the dissolution papers. This was his failure. The technical grounds of the complaint rested on his administrative error, not on Taejun's choices. Then Taejun was invited to speak. He stood, looked at the council, and told the truth. I entered this monastery at 18 to escape suffering, not to seek enlightenment, to hide from it. I was afraid of my family, of failure, of wanting things I wasn't sure I deserved. The monastery gave me peace, and I confused peace with progress. He paused, letting the silence hold. When my brother died, I came back to the world. And the world sent me a woman who showed me that everything I'd been running from was actually the material of the practice. Not obstacles to transcendence, the whole point. Her joy, her grief, her courage, her love. These are not distractions from the Dharma. They are the Dharma, lived in the actual conditions of human existence. He looked at Brother Daesung. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to take a wife. I'm going to raise children and run a company and build a bridge between cultures. None of this is a violation of what I learned here. It is an application of it. A pause. If the council rules that my departure was illegitimate, that's paperwork. But I've already answered the only question that matters. Did I waste what I was taught here? The answer is no. I'm using it every day. In the world, where it was always meant to be used. The ruling came after 90 minutes of deliberation. Administrative failure acknowledged. Master Yoon's responsibility formally recorded. Taejun's departure recognized as legitimate exit under emergency family provisions. All vows formally dissolved. As of today, officially completely, he was no longer a monk. Brother Daesung looked at him on the way out, and Taejun saw in the young man's face not malice but something more complicated, envy. The particular envy of someone who'd committed to certainty and was watching someone else live freely. Come back sometime, Taejun said quietly. When you're ready to find out if the practice holds in the world. It does. It's just harder. And better. Outside the council chamber, the autumn light was extraordinary. Master Yoon stood beside him. It holds, the old monk asked. The practice in the world. It holds. Taejun thought of Adiz. Of the garden in Seoul. Of a Lagos morning with traffic outside, and a baby forming, and everything uncertain, and everything chosen. It holds better there than anywhere else. He had 3 days left in Seoul, and he spent every hour he could with Jiwoo and Hannah. They played in the garden, hide and seek among the shaped pines, feeding the koi, sitting in the pavilion where so much had begun. Jiwoo showed him a math problem he'd been struggling with. Taejun worked through it with him on paper, patient and precise, and watched the boy's face light when it clicked. Hannah demanded he braid her hair the way Ada does it. He attempted this with catastrophic results. She ended up with something that looked more architectural disaster than hairstyle, and they both laughed until they couldn't breathe. Will the baby look like Ada? Hannah asked as he fixed the damage. He stopped. Who told you about the baby? Yama was on the phone. I heard. She twisted to look at him, utterly unapologetic. Will it? Maybe. The baby will look like both of us. A little Korean, a little Nigerian. I want it to look like Ada, Hannah said decisively. Ada is the prettiest. I agree. But it will be beautiful either way. Because it will have both. Jiwoo appeared in the doorway, quiet as always, listening. He'd been doing more of this lately, standing at the edges of conversations, absorbing. His father's habit, Sujin said. Minjun had processed out loud, Jiwoo processed in silence first. If the baby has both, Jiwoo said finally, does that mean it belongs to both places? Korea and Nigeria? Yes. Does that mean it will always be from somewhere else? Wherever it is. The question was so precise, so carefully observed, that Taejun had to sit with it before answering. It means it belongs to a bigger place. One that's made of both. That's not the same as always being foreign. It's being from a place that most people haven't found yet. He looked at his nephew. Like a bridge that connects two countries. The bridge doesn't belong to either side. But without it, neither side can reach the other. Jiwoo thought about this. Nodded once. Okay, he said, in the tone that meant he'd filed it somewhere important. On his last night in Seoul, sitting in the pavilion after the children were asleep, Sujin brought 2 cups of tea and sat beside him. You look like yourself, she said. I look different from when I left. Different is how you look like yourself when you've been pretending to be someone else. She pressed his cup into his hands. Lagos is good for you. Lagos is chaos and heat and power cuts and traffic that defies physics. He smiled. And yes, it's good for me. She's good for you. She's the most honest person I've ever met. He looked at the koi moving quietly in the dark water. She doesn't let me hide. Not even from myself. Especially not from myself. Minjun said that about me once. Her voice was soft, memory-edged. He said I was the first person who'd ever made him feel seen instead of watched. There's a difference. Being watched is performance. Being seen is rest. She paused. I think Ada sees you. She does. Then go back to her. Sujin stood, gathering her cup. And tell her she has an open invitation to this house. Her and the baby. The whole complicated, intercontinental, impossible family. She smiled. Minjun would have loved the complication. He would have requested weekly updates and given unsolicited advice. Constantly. She laughed, the first fully unguarded laugh he'd heard from her in months. Not the bittersweet laugh of grief, but something newer, beginning to recover its strength. Tell her also that Jiwoo has been looking up Lagos on YouTube. He's building a case for why they should visit in the summer holidays. What kind of case? Jollof rice, apparently. He wants to know what the real version tastes like after the Nigerian restaurant debate. I'll tell her. She'll have opinions. Good. We need more people in this family with opinions. While Taejun was in Seoul, Adiz built. It was what she did when afraid, she built. Structure against chaos. Work against uncertainty. This was what had gotten her through graduate school, through the Atlantic crossing back to Africa, through every moment when she'd wondered if she'd chosen correctly. She taught her first class on a Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock, 42 students in a seminar room with 3 missing ceiling tiles and a projection system held together by optimism. She wore yellow. She stood at the front and said, "This course exists to ask a question most of your previous education never considered asking. Whose story is art history? We're going to find out. Some answers will make you angry. Good. Anger is useful when it's informed." By the end of the class, 2 students had asked to extend their papers. 3 had stayed after to argue about colonialism in museum curation. 1 had cried. She called Tae-jun that evening from the apartment, her feet up on the unpacked boxes she was using as a coffee table. "Tell me everything," he said immediately. "Every detail." She did. Every student, every argument, every moment the room came alive. He listened without interrupting. Just the sound of his breathing, steady and present from 8,000 kilometers away. "I can hear it," he said when she finished. "In your voice. This is what you were built for. Don't get philosophical. I'm still nauseous." "How nauseous?" "The morning sickness extends through most of the afternoon in Lagos heat, which is medically unsporting." She pressed a hand to her stomach. "The baby clearly has opinions already." "About what?" "Apparently egusi soup is unacceptable. Jollof rice is fine. My mother says this is a good sign for its character." "Your mother knows?" "My mother found out the way Nigerian mothers find out everything. She simply knew, somehow, before I told her. She called me 3 days after you left and said, 'You're pregnant, don't try to deny it.' I didn't even try." She paused. She cried. "The good kind. What did your father say?" "He said, 'I hope the Korean man is coming back.' I said you were." He said, "Good. Then we'll discuss the rest properly." She smiled. "Which for my father means he's already planning the naming ceremony." Tae-jun was quiet a moment. "I need to ask you something." "Ask. Will you marry me?" "Properly. With your answer. Not the apartment proposal while sick version." His voice was low and serious. "I know I said it while you had food poisoning and I was panicking, and I want to ask it again when we're both present and sure." "Tae-jun, I'm not asking for your answer right now. I'm asking if you'll let me ask. Properly. When I'm back in Lagos. When I can do it the way you deserve." Adiz looked at the half-unpacked apartment. The pregnancy test still on the bathroom shelf. The window full of Lagos evening. The smell of street food and rain coming, the sound of music from somewhere below. "Yes," she said. "You can ask." "Good." She could hear his smile through the phone. "I've been practicing." "Is it better than last time?" "Considerably. Though I can't promise I won't panic." "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." The meeting with Professor Ease and Dr. Adebayo happened on day 4. Adiz had prepared for 3 days, documented every uncomfortable interaction from her time at Toronto, saved emails with timestamps, made notes on the pattern of what was said and when. She walked into Professor Ease's office and laid it all on the desk. "I want to be transparent," she said, "about the nature of my previous professional relationship with Dr. Adebayo, and about why I requested this meeting rather than accepting a private dinner invitation." Professor Ease read her documentation carefully. Adebayo sat across the room in a chair that suddenly seemed slightly smaller than it had the day before. He recovered quickly, men like him always did. He was professional, diplomatic, expressed surprise at any misinterpretation of his mentorship style, made measured statements about his genuine support for her career. Adiz let him talk. Then she said calmly, "I appreciated your letters of support for this position. I hope to make this department proud entirely on my own merits from this point. I'm sure you'll understand if I prefer to develop my own donor relationships through standard institutional channels." Translation: "I see exactly what you came here for. You will not get it. And Professor Ease is sitting right there as a witness." Adebayo left Lagos 2 days later. She called Tae-jun immediately. He picked up on the first ring. "He's gone," she said. 3 seconds of silence. "Did he?" "He tried. He failed." She exhaled slowly. "I have it all documented. If he tries anything later, anything about my qualifications, my letters, anything, I have a file." "You handled it perfectly." "I handled it correctly. Which is better than perfectly." She dropped onto the apartment floor, suddenly exhausted in the way that came in waves when she let herself feel the weight of the past week. "Tae-jun, I need you to come home. For more days. I promise. For days." She pressed her back against the wall. "Tell me something good. Tell me about Seoul." So he talked. About the monastery hearing and what he'd said. About his father's surprising gentleness. About Jiwoo and the compass. About Hannah's architectural hair disaster. About Sujin laughing, the real kind. And she sat in the apartment in Lagos, In the heat and the noise and the chaos she was slowly learning to love, and listened to the sound of his voice knitting their worlds together from 8,000 kilometers away. She thought, this is what we built. Not proximity. Not ease. Something that holds. On the morning of day 10, Adi's power went out. Not for the first time, it had gone out twice already. The generator cutting in after an hour, the routine of Lagos infrastructure doing what it did. But this morning the generator was also silent, and by 8 a.m. the apartment was 34 degrees with no relief in sight. She sat on the floor in a light cotton dress, her laptop battery at 12%, the Wi-Fi off, a bowl of sliced watermelon because that was all she could stand to eat, and thought, this is my life now. Then she thought, and it's actually okay. The watermelon was cold and sweet. The sounds of Lagos below, traffic, someone's radio, a child's voice arguing with practiced enthusiasm, were becoming familiar. Her body was building a person. She had 42 students who were beginning to understand that art history was actually a political act. She picked up a notebook, started writing. Not lecture notes, the chapter of her dissertation she'd been avoiding for 6 months. The one about the colonial looting of Igbo bronzes. The one that required her to be angry and precise simultaneously, which was its own kind of courage. The power came back at noon. She was 3 pages deeper into the chapter, and had eaten all the watermelon. Her phone showed 5 voice notes from her mother, 4 texts from a sister, 2 emails from students, 1 from the department chair about a grant application that had just opened, and a single photo from Taejun. It was Jiwoo and Hannah at the airport, Hannah holding up a sign that said "Come back, Uncle" and ADA in extremely uneven letters. Jiwoo was holding his compass. Both of them had identical expressions of determined hope. She stared at the photo for a long time. Then she got up, opened her laptop, and started researching schools in Lagos with robust foreign student support programs. Because if the children were going to visit in summer holidays, and they clearly were, they should know what to look forward to. He came back on a Thursday evening. Adiz was at the airport 20 minutes early, which was 15 minutes more efficient than Lagos traffic usually permitted, a fact she was privately proud of. She stood in the arrivals hall in a green dress that she'd bought at the Balagan market that week, her braids newly done, sweating slightly from the walk from the taxi. She'd been rehearsing composure. She'd planned a dignified greeting, reserved but warm, adult. The plan lasted until she saw him walking through the arrivals gate, travel crumpled, slightly thinner, carrying his small bag with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to travel light, and then she walked directly into his arms without any composure whatsoever. He folded around her immediately, holding her the way she'd been feeling held in her mind for 14 days. Warm and certain and specific, the particular way his arms arranged themselves around her that she'd been cataloging since that first night in his monastery bare room in Seoul. "You're here," she said into his shoulder. "I'm here. You smell like airplane. I'll fix that shortly." He pulled back to look at her, his hands on her face, studying her like he was updating a picture he'd been carrying. "You look sweaty and pregnant and exhausted?" "Beautiful," he said simply. "You look beautiful." In the taxi home, she leaned against him and told him everything she hadn't fully conveyed over the phone. The first week of classes, the documentation meeting, the power cut, and the 3 pages of dissertation. The Balagan market where she'd bought the dress and bargained too hard and too little in alternating stalls before finding her rhythm. He listened to all of it, his hand in hers, his thumb tracing patterns on her wrist the way he did when he was paying close attention. "You built things," he said. "I built things. You didn't just survive. You built." There was watermelon involved, but yes, essentially. She looked at him. "Your turn. The full version. Not just what you told me on the phone." He talked until they reached the apartment. About his father's hospital room, and the jade pendant now hanging around his neck. About the monastery and what he'd said to the council, and how it felt to walk out of Biapjusa for the last time. Not with grief, not with relief, but with a clean understanding of what that decade had been and what it was now. About Jiwoo's compass and Hannah's hair and Sujin laughing. "She's going to be okay," Adiz said. "She's going to be more than okay. She's already taking over the company board's environmental committee. Apparently she's been wanting to challenge Minjun's oversight of their sustainability practices for years and never had the authority." He smiled. "She has the authority now. Minjun's legacy with Sujin's vision." "Exactly." At the apartment, she showed him what she'd done with it in his absence. She'd unpacked. All of it. Her books arranged by region and period on the shelving unit. The Nigerian fabrics she'd bought at the market draped over the couch in a way that turned it from beige to alive, a small altar in the corner that combined her grandmother's prayer beads with the tiny Buddha figure he'd brought from Seoul. He stood in the middle of the room and turned slowly, taking it in. You made it home, he said. I made it ours. He turned to face her, something shifting in his expression. The careful, deliberate quality she recognized from the moments he was making a conscious choice. I need to ask you something, he said. Taejun. The proper version. That I promised. He crossed the room, took both her hands. I don't have a ring yet. The one I commissioned in Seoul won't be ready for another week, so this will require you to accept the intention and wait for the object. He looked at her steadily. Ada. Adiz Okonkwo. I spent 10 years learning to want nothing, and then you showed up in my family's gallery with your enormous camera bag and your laugh that broke the silence I'd been hiding in. And I have been choosing you ever since. Not because I had no choice. Because you are the choice I want to make every day for the rest of my life. She was not going to cry. She'd decided. She was absolutely crying. You asked me once why you. Out of everyone. He squeezed her hands. Because you made me brave enough to be fully human. And I want to spend my life being human, messily and courageously with you. Will you marry me? In Seoul and Lagos and everywhere in between. Will you be my bridge? She looked at him. At this man who'd walked out of a monastery into the world and had the extraordinary good sense to land in her apartment, in her gallery, in her city, in her life. Yes, she said. You absolute disaster of a monk. Yes. He laughed, the rare, full laugh that transformed his face the way she'd first noticed in his family's gallery, the one she'd been falling in love with ever since, and kissed her. They made love slowly that night. No urgency. No interrupted timing. No crisis at the door. Just two people who'd spent 14 days building their lives separately, and were now choosing to build them together. He'd learned her body the way he'd learned everything in his life. With complete and focused attention, nothing wasted, nothing rushed. She'd learned the particular tension in his shoulders that meant he was overthinking, the way his breathing changed when she touched the back of his neck, the specific sound he made when she did the things she discovered in their second week together that rendered all his discipline temporarily irrelevant. She took her time with him now, tracing the line of his shoulder, the angle of his jaw, the hands that had been formal for 10 years and had learned warmth entirely because of her. I missed you, she said against his throat. How much? An entirely undignified amount. She pulled back to look at him, his face in the Lagos evening light filtering through the window, the city sounds around them, this man who had walked out of a monastery and into her specific kind of chaos. 14 days was too long. 14 days was necessary. He rolled her gently beneath him, his weight warm and familiar. But it's the longest I'll be gone. Whatever happens next, I'm not leaving you that long again. What if? Whatever happens, he said firmly, and kissed her before she could build another hypothetical. She let the hypotheticals go. He learned her all over again. What had shifted in 2 weeks, what was new in her body with the pregnancy, what she needed and didn't need. She was different. She was also exactly the same. He told her both. You're different, he murmured as his hands moved over her. The baby is changing my body. More alive, he interrupted. More, he paused, searching. More rooted. Like Lagos got into you. Lagos got into me before you came back and made it official. He laughed against her collarbone. The laugh that undid her every time. They found their rhythm, slower than urgency, deeper than performance, the particular kind of lovemaking that is really just sustained attention given physical form. She felt herself unnaught from 14 days of managing and building and handling things alone. Felt her body remember what it was to be with someone who knew her. When she came, she said his name quietly, with something in her voice that was less about the pleasure and more about the fact of him being there, present, real, hers. He followed her with his face in her hair, and she held on, and Lagos sang outside their window. After, they lay tangled in the heat, the ceiling fan turning slowly, her head on his chest. The baby, he said quietly. Can you feel anything yet? Not movement. Too early. But, she guided his hand to the small curve that was barely yet a curve. Here. His hand rested there, warm and still. He said nothing for a long time. Thank you, he said finally. For what? For all of it. For insisting I handle Seoul properly before coming back. For handling Adebayo on your own terms. For building. He gestured at the apartment. This. For saying yes. A pause. For making me brave enough to deserve yes. She tilted her head up to look at him. You made yourself brave. I just refused to let you be cowardly. That's a form of gift. You're very philosophical for someone who just had. Former monk. The philosophy doesn't turn off. She settled her head back on his chest, feeling the steady beat under her ear. Tell me something you want. Something for us. Not for the family or the company or the bridge between cultures. Just us. He thought about it. She waited, knowing the answer would be real. He'd learned to give real answers. I want a Sunday morning ritual, he said. Every week. Here. That we build together and protect. Where we cook something and sit somewhere beautiful and do nothing useful. Just exist together, completely present, with no responsibilities allowed in. That's the most monk thing you've ever said. Former monk. And yes, I want to take the best part of the monastery and build it into our actual life. One morning a week where we remember why. She thought about this. Jollof rice on Sunday mornings. I'll learn to make it properly. You'll try to make it properly and I'll supervise, and it will be an entire process. I enjoy the process. She smiled against his chest. I know you do. They lay in the heat in the city, in their apartment that was becoming a home by degrees, and Taejun talked about what they'd build. The Sunday ritual. The baby's room, which was currently a stacked collection of books and needed structural rethinking. The trip to Seoul in 4 months when they'd introduce her to his family properly as his fiancée. The return to Lagos that would follow. The wedding, which would be complicated and intercontinental, and probably exhausting, and absolutely theirs. She listened, contributing, adjusting, building the plan together in the dark. This, she thought, is what it feels like. Not the falling, the landing, the choosing over and over to stay. 3 weeks after Taejun's return, Adi's department received a funding notification. She opened the email at 7 a.m., sitting at the kitchen table with her second glass of water. The baby had opinions about everything, including hydration, Taejun making tea at the counter behind her. She read the email twice, then a third time. Taejun, the department received a private arts grant. Substantial. 3 years guaranteed, with a renewal option. She turned. It came through the Kim Corporation International Cultural Exchange Foundation. He said nothing, continued making tea with the focused attention of someone who had definitely not done exactly this thing. Taejun, Kim Corporation International Cultural Exchange Foundation. I may have suggested to my father that establishing such a foundation would legitimize the narrative of Kim Corporation expanding to Africa. He turned. And that funding African art education programs was an obvious first initiative. You didn't mention this. I didn't want you to feel. Don't say dependent. Don't say. I was going to say I didn't want you to feel that your program's success was contingent on our relationship. He brought the tea to the table, sitting across from her. It's not. The grant is evaluated on academic merit. You applied through proper channels. The foundation has an independent board. They funded you because your program proposal was excellent. She looked at him. Did you see the proposal before the board did? I suggested my father consider establishing the foundation. I had no input on grant recipients. Taejun, Ada. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, thank you. You did the work. I just made sure the funding mechanisms could see it. That's an important distinction, and also exactly what a protective partner does, and I can't decide if I should argue with you about it. You can argue with me about it, he said equably. I have 3 more years of learning to fight properly with someone I love. I'll need the practice. She laughed, pushed his shoulder, went back to reading the email terms. 3 years, she said. This buys us 3 years. Long enough to have the baby. For the program to establish its reputation on its own. Long enough. He reached across and took her hand, brief and certain. To build roots. She looked at their joined hands. His pale fingers in hers, brown and warm. The ring would arrive from Seoul next week. She knew what it would look like because he'd described it. Sapphires, Korean silverwork, Igbo geometric patterns. Both of them. Together. Roots. For weeks after Taejun's return, a letter arrived from Beopjusa Temple. Not from Master Yoon. From the temple's legal representative. Brother Daesung had filed an appeal. He wasn't contesting the dissolution ruling. He was contesting something older. The original bequest. When Taejun had entered the monastery at 18, his father had made a substantial donation to Beopjusa Temple. In the donation's legal language, poorly drafted by a young family lawyer, there was a clause. The clause stated that in the event the donor's son left the monastery before completing a full 30-year vow period, a portion of the donation, approximately 40%, was to be returned to the temple's endowment. 40% of a Kim Corporation donation from 2012. The number on the document made Adi's eyes go wide. Is this? She turned the document. Taejun, is this real? He sat very still with the quality she recognized now. Not meditation stillness, but the stillness of someone processing a blow. I didn't know this clause existed, he said. My father never told me. Can it be contested? Perhaps. The legal language is ambiguous. But it will take time. And lawyers. He looked at her. It would reduce my personal assets significantly. while we're building the program, expecting a baby, establishing a life here. We have the grant. The grant is for the department, not for living expenses. He stood, moving to the window. Lagos traffic below, relentless and indifferent. Ada, if this is enforced, then we manage. She stood, going to him. That's what we do. We figure out what we have, and we manage. I brought you to Lagos with the understanding that I had resources. That I could. I did not come to Lagos for your resources. I came because I love you and I have a job and we're building something. Resources are good and their absence is solvable. She touched his arm. Tae-jun, look at me. He looked at her. What did you say at the monastery hearing? About facing reality without flinching. She raised her eyebrows. Do that now. Something shifted in his face, the particular unclenching that she'd watched happen, incrementally, over the months she'd known him. The release of the need to control the outcome. Okay, he said. Legal challenge. Get the documentation. Figure out the actual exposure. He paused. And call my father, who almost certainly knew about this clause and has some explaining to do. Start there, she agreed. Call your father. He pulled out his phone, then stopped. Our baby, he said suddenly. She put her hand on her stomach. Now, at 11 weeks, there was a perceptible change. A fact. A presence. What about the baby? I want to call the baby something that means the one who came in difficult times and made them better. He looked at her. In Igbo, what would that be? She thought about it. Chukwumika. It means God has done great things. Or, she paused. Amara. It means grace. Gift. Amara, he said. If it's a girl. And if it's a boy. Ji-woo suggested something. He almost smiled. He said we should name it after your father. So the Lagos family and the Seoul family have the same name in it. Adiz felt something catch in her throat. Ji-woo said that? He's 5. He's already better at this than I am. Ji-woo is an extraordinary child. She pressed her forehead against Tae-jun's shoulder. Call your father. Handle the clause. Then we cook something for dinner and we eat it together in our apartment in Lagos, and we do not panic. In that order. In that order. He kissed her forehead. Picked up his phone. Outside, Lagos did what it always did. Moved and honked and sang and refused to pause for anyone's complications. She looked at the letter on the table. At the man on the phone speaking careful Korean to his father. At the ring on her finger that was both cultures together. She thought, this is the test. Not the dramatic ones, the monastery hearing, the professor, the heart attack. Those were the tests that looked like tests. This was the real one. The ordinary difficulty. The grinding kind of hard that doesn't resolve in a single scene, but requires daily choosing. She opened her laptop. Started drafting the letter to Tae-jun's lawyers. Because that's what you did when you were building something real. You didn't wait to be strong enough. You built while becoming. Family. Let me tell you what just happened. We watched a man go to Seoul and come back a free man. Not free because his obligations disappeared, but free because he finally understood they were chosen. That there's a difference between duty you're trapped in and duty you take on with open eyes. We watched a woman face down a man who thought she owed him something, armed with nothing but documentation, institutional process, and absolute refusal to be a debt someone collected. We watched 2 people build a home, with fabric from a Lagos market and a Seoul Buddha statue on the same shelf, jollof rice and Korean tea at the same table. A Sunday ritual they're protecting because the most sacred thing isn't the extraordinary. It's the ordinary kept intentionally. And then we hit the temple clause. The money. The new complication that doesn't have a dramatic resolution. Just lawyers and phone calls, and 2 people choosing not to panic. Because that is what real love looks like. Not the grand gestures. Those are important. But the moment after the grand gesture, when the ordinary difficulty arrives and you have to decide, are we still in this? They're still in this. So here's what's coming in part 5. And I need you to SIT down. Baby complications at the 12-week scan. The kind that require a decision. Tae-jun's father arriving in Lagos uninvited, with the full weight of Korean traditional expectation. Soo-jin calling with news about Min-jun's company files. Something Min-jun hid. Something that changes the inheritance. Ada's mother's health declining. She needs to be near family. And a publisher reaches out about Adiz's dissertation. The same week someone else applies for her job. Family. Part 5 is not going to be gentle. But I promise you this. Tae-jun and Adiz are not going to let any of it make them small. They are going to face every single thing together, with their jollof rice and their Buddhism and their Sunday mornings, and their 2 cultures and their baby and their stubborn, chosen, bridge-building love. Comment right now. Stay, if you think they make it through everything. Break, if you think the weight will finally crack them. Tell me honestly, do you believe they're going to make it? Because I've been writing this story and I'm still not entirely sure, and that is why I can't stop. Subscribe, like, share this with every person you know who believes love is built, not found. And family, whatever difficult thing you're building right now, the thing that keeps getting interrupted and complicated and harder than you thought, keep building. Roots don't grow in easy soil. This is Afro Dark Diaries TV. Part 5 drops soon. Don't miss it.